everyone, I'm back with you later the same day. I am actually coming at you later on Wednesday, May 15th, but I'm going to talk about what happened today, Wednesday, May 15th. This will actually come out on Thursday, May 16th in the Chad Daybell trial. So if you're new here, welcome. And I hope I earn your subscription. My name is Tracy. I do true crime, dark history, and horror film reviews. I also cover select court cases, ones that I've done very deep dives on, and I have over 150 videos on this particular case. And so with that being said, let's dive into what happened in the Chad Daybell trial on Wednesday, May 15th, shall we? FBI Special Agent Rick Wright was back on the stand with Pryor cross-examining him. First thing, they're talking more about Alex Cox's movements between September 1st and October 19th. They start out talking about some movement of his on September 22nd. This was the last day that JJ was seen alive, and it shows that he was back and forth between Lori and his apartments. Basically, Pryor's trying to say, well, what was wrong with him being in between the two apartments? Wright says, nothing. We're just showing his movements. Then they skip forward to September 28th, where he was seen at Sportsman's Warehouse, and this is when he bought a certain suit that was worn in some of his hijinks. And then he asked Pryor asked if Wright if Alex had bought a hunting license prior to then. Wright says, I don't recall. And then he asks more about the day that Tammy was actually shot at, October 9th, and kind of questioning Alex's whereabouts, trying to not put him there at the time of shooting, pretty much, which is kind of opposite from his previous strategy of just trying to pin it all on Alex. And then they go over more of his movements between Salem Church and Chad's property. And then Pryor asked Wright if there were other occasions that Alex might have been near Salem Church, and Wright answers there were 7 occasions where he was in the area and other times when he may have passed by. Pryor has no further questions, and Blake will do a quick redirect. He asks Wright when he became involved in the investigation. He said November 27th, 2019. She shows the GPS image of the Salem LDS Church. Blake asked if there was any indication Alex knew anyone living in the area of the church other than Chad. Wright says no, there was no indication of that, and that the distance between the Daybell home and the church is 2.6 miles. And he says that they are confident there was no other connection between that area other than Alex to Chad. And then they talk about, was there any indication that anyone else like Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, were in Idaho on September 8th or 9th? He says, no, not that he's aware of. And that was it also assumed that 𝗙𝗪 lived in apartment 175 with her mom? Wright says yes. And then they go over all of the times Alex went back and forth between his and Lori's apartment, and then how he stayed at the Daybell residence 2.5 hours and then went to Del Taco. So he's painting a picture that there was something going on, that Alex was on a mission, pretty much. And then they talk a little bit about the driveway and then the raccoon text, and he just kind of goes all around repainting the narrative of what I think is true. And then Wright is actually released from subpoena, and then the state recalls Detective 𝗟𝗪𝗁. We're getting close to the end of the state's case. The witnesses that we're going to talk about from today, and then what's going to testify tomorrow, Thursday, May 16th, will be the last of the state's witnesses. So we're getting close to the defense starting to present their case. Rob Wood questions Hermosa. He asks when Lori Vallow was arrested. He confirms it was February 20th, 2020, when she ended up in the Madison County Jail for failing to produce the children. And then they listened to a couple of the phone calls between Chad and Lori. She said that she never mentioned 𝗙𝗪 or JJ only talked to Chad. There was never any mention of it. And then they moved to admit an exhibit of a joint call between Chad and Lori. And basically they play the call. We hear them talking about the second coming, how it's going to be soon. This is when they were predicting the end of the world in July, and this call was made on June 8th, 2020. And we also know that Alex was dead by this time. So they're talking about the end of days and all of that good stuff. And then Wood asks if Chad is talking about being able to communicate with people that are dead. 𝗓𝗄𝘳 says yes, he talks quite a lot about being able to communicate with people beyond the veil. And then we listen to more of the talking back and forth between Lori and Chad, a lot of giggling, all that good stuff. They don't seem very scared about the end of days. I'll just put it out there. And then moving on, Lori talks about their blueprint and their plan, and how there's a 99% chance they're going to have trouble with their plan. So they're, I guess, thinking about the law enforcement ramifications. And then Chad talks about them being accused of being violent. Lori says, I'm not being violent. I'm just trying to get their attention. So then they're going over again, talking about a blueprint and blah, blah. And then Wood questions 𝗓𝗄𝘳 about some more calls, saying that they're talking about the Eurythmics music, oddly, and that they're really kind of talking in code almost. And then the call is over. Wood has no further questions. There's a short break. And then basically the judge was a little late getting back into the courtroom, and so Pryor objects to the measurement of the driveway being entered into evidence. He says they're talking about an arbitrary point connecting it to the site where JJ was buried. There's no relevance to it. Blake argues that the driveway is an issue, and there's a significant amount of time was spent during the trial discussing it. So he wants all indications of the measurements of Chad's driveway thrown out. Blake says her main argument is that Alex used the shooting ranges for hunting practice along the lines of how long the Daybell driveway was. So it's directly connected to the attempted shooting of Tammy Daybell. Boyce agrees that the exhibit of the outline of the driveway could be problematic, but he says that the driveway was not referenced when testimony was provided. So he said it could confuse the jury, and he does sustain the objection, but says that they will be allowed to discuss the length of the driveway as it refers to the shooting, but not the burial of JJ. And then Pryor begins cross-examining 𝗓𝗄𝘳. He asks about other recordings. He says that was it unusual for them to discuss the second coming? He goes, no, it wasn't unusual, that they were very wrapped up in that doctrine. And then they say, they talk about some other calls where they're almost talking in code, and basically Pryor puts out other meanings that they might have. Then we talk about pictures of the tools taken from the Daybell property the day the children's bodies were found. And basically what Pryor is trying to do is paint a picture that anybody, again, could have touched those tools. Pryor says that a significant number of knives, weapons, and guns were found in the garage, and he says why all of them weren't tested, and do they not have tracking on why and where all of these guns and knives were purchased. 𝗓𝗄𝘳 said he does not. Those particular ones were not relevant to the case. Pryor has nothing further. There is no redirect, and 𝗓𝗄𝘳 is finally released from subpoena. The next state witness is Attorney General Investigator Nicholas Edwards, and Pryor has a brief objection to him, but it is overruled, so he is placed on the stand, and Lindsay Blake is questioning him. She asked him how closely he works with the police. He said he works very closely with the Pocatello police, and that his specialty is working closely with rifles, including assault rifles. So he was somebody that they kind of collaborated with on determining what kind of weapon was used in the attempted shooting of Tammy Daybell. He said in April of 2020, he received a request to assist Fremont County and other agencies in investigating the deaths of JJ, Tylee, Tammy, and Charles Vallow, and that a large part of his investigation was focused on Tammy Daybell's death. He said that he conducted interviews with all interested parties, relevant parties, and conducted phone data review. And then they admit a PowerPoint of his findings. He said he constructed a timeline of when Chad and Lori meet in October of 2018 in St. George, Utah, and that from there they follow all of the relevant Google searches, all of the text messages, all the emails, and they really paint a picture of how all these people fit together leading up to the crimes. And so they go over that entire timeline, including travels back and forth. He said the most interesting thing to him is that in all the emails, all the phone calls, all the texts, he never found any indication that Chad was planning to divorce Tammy along any of these things. But he did find indications that Chad was saying she was going to die young. So again, prior saying divorce means nothing if it was never mentioned. And then they talk about the email that Charles sent Tammy regarding the affair and how it was left unread. And then, of course, that was in June of 2019. And then they talk about other text messages going back and forth between Lori, Alex, and Chad, talking about getting rid of Ned or Nick or whatever they call, Mr. Schneider that was inhabiting Charles. And then there were texts back and forth when they were married in Hawaii. No mention of the children, where they are, their well-being. We just know that they were no longer there. Then they see some traveling of Zulema when she came to visit them. And then on October 3rd, Chad texts Lori, "Good night, little angel. So excited to go on our date." And then we know what happened to Tammy later that month. On October 4th and 5th, Chad urges Tammy to go visit her family in Springville, Utah. And then when Tammy makes it to Utah on October 4th, Chad texts Lori he's eager to see her soon. So they definitely hung out while Tammy was in Utah. And then there's a few back and forth messages while Tammy was in Utah. And then she returns, of course, to Idaho. And then we have on October 7th, Alex signing in to the St. Anthony gun range. On October 8th, he conducted an internet search for a 6.5 Grendel drop from 100 to 200 yards and the range of a specific type of weapon. And then, of course, on October 9th, we see his travels between Salem Church and Chad Daybell's property. That was, of course, the night that she was shot at. And then we look at more text messages between them all, as well as travel of Alex to other gun ranges and other sporting goods stores. And then, of course, we have all of that tying into what eventually would happen. And then Tammy emailed her son Mark on October 13th. She wrote that she was coming home from clogging and that she had pulled into the driveway, and she explained what happened on the date of the shooting to her son Mark, and that she initially identified the weapon as a rifle, not necessarily a paintball gun. And then they talk about how a hopper on a paintball gun could resemble an AR, and an AR could resemble a paintball gun. And then then it was later proven that Alex did own a 6.5 millimeter Grendel AR. All of this showing that that was the weapon used to attempt to shoot Tammy Daybell. It only jammed, and that's what saved her life on that day. And then more Google searches about ARs from Alex. And then on October 18th, Alex is near the Daybell home from 10:07 to 10:45 at the Salem Church. We anticipate he's kind of scoping things out. And then showing how Tammy's phone was active all day that day until she died, pretty much. The morning after Tammy died, Lori sends a text to Chad saying she is missing him and wants to hold him tight, and that and how she wants to get on a workout plan and all this stuff, and how to get ready for Hawaii, you know, basically. And then they talk about the life insurance policies, which we've already heard about, and that how Chad gave Alex a patriarchal blessing in November, and then of course leading up to his death in December. And then the prosecution has no further questions. Pryor will now cross-examine. He begins by listing the law enforcement agencies that provide all the information to Edwards. He nods and says that yes, all of those people did provide him information. Pryor asks Edwards if he tracked the number of calls between Chad and Lori on a daily basis. He says no, only on particular days that were of interest. He says he understands it was not unusual for them to communicate. They're simply looking at specific dates and what was discussed on specific dates. They talk more about his timeline, including the malachite ring. Pryor asks, where does it say, let's kill 2 kids? Edward says, you won't find those exact words. We only have the actual actions and evidence. And then Pryor asks if the chart has anything to do with specific religion. He says he doesn't know what chart Pryor is talking about. I assume the light and dark chart. He says he's not going to speculate because he doesn't know. And then again, Pryor is trying to argue that it was a paintball gun, not a rifle, even though we've already determined that it most likely was a rifle. Then they talk about the life insurance policies. Again, Pryor simply trying to paint Chad as a unwilling participant or a dumbass that didn't know what was going on. Then Pryor has no further questions. Blake redirects. She basically shows another slide detailing all the evidence of October 9th and that Alex and Chad were texting each other around the time Tammy had been shot at. And then they talk more about Alex's being around the property on the day Tammy died. And Blake has no further questions. Edwards is released, and we are done today, done for the day. That is on Wednesday, May 15th. Tomorrow, I will go over what happens on Thursday, May 16th, and I will have that out to you by Friday, the 17th. Remember, we're getting down to the last of the state's witnesses, so we will be switching over to the defense case after that. And I do anticipate they're going to call a whole lot of witnesses as well, unlike Lori, who offered no defense. Anyway, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, keep on crying.